Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from South Africa, where the new parliament is slated to convene for the first time on Friday, after the May 29th election, which had no party emerge as an outright winner. President Cyril Ramaphosa and the ruling African National Congress have been scrambling to form a government with the opposition parties as it seeks to form a unity government. After days of limbo, there seems to be some headway as the opposition Inkatha Freedom Party, or the IFP, has now agreed to join a unity government with the ANC and the Democratic Alliance.
The IFP will join a government of national unity that includes the ANC and the Democratic Alliance. In reality, the only options are to become part of the government or part of the opposition. The mandate we received from the electorate is for the IFP to contribute to the effective governance of South Africa.
Both the DA and the ANC have not confirmed the agreement yet. For the first time in 3 decades, the African National Congress lost its majority in Parliament. The ANC is the party of Nelson Mandela and has been ruling South Africa since the end of apartheid in 1994. However, owing to economic woes, corruption, rising crime rates, the ANC failed to win the voters' trust. Now, the party managed to secure only 159 out of 400 seats, well short of the halfway mark of simple majority. Trailing behind is the centrist DA, which secured 87 seats. Then there is former President Jacob Zuma's new MK party with 58 seats, followed by the far-left EFF with 39 seats, and the conservative IFP, which secured 17 seats. After the results, ANC proposed forming a government of national unity instead of a narrower coalition with 1 or 2 parties. It invited all 17 other parties represented in Parliament to be a part of it. However, Ramaphosa and the ANC have been struggling to bring all the parties onto the same page ahead of the Friday deadline, when new Parliament members elect the country's president. Now, the Conservative IFP says it will join the government with the ANC and the DA. Such a coalition would also sit well with business leaders and financial markets. However, a deal with DA is a widely unpopular choice among ANC supporters, and that's because many regard the DA as a defender of white privilege. Analysts say that including IFP could help temper concerns regarding the DA. Now, many in the ANC have favored an alliance with the MK or the EFF, both of which are led by former ANC leaders Jacob Zuma and Julius Malema. However, these 2 parties have refused to work with the ANC. MK party leader and former President Jacob Zuma even filed an application at the country's top court seeking the postponement of presidential elections scheduled for Friday. However, this bid has been rejected by the court. Zuma, in his application, had alleged vote irregularities in the parliamentary elections, but the court has ruled that the application was a self-created urgency and it lacked merit. Now, for more on this, we have with us political analyst Sean Duthie, who is joining us live from Cape Town. Thank you for being with us, Sean.
Thank you.
Now, what are the main benefits and the main challenges of forming a unity government in South Africa, especially considering the country's complex political landscape and history?
I think the benefits and the challenges really depend on what the makeup of the government of national unity will be. I mean, the proposed one, as you mentioned, and the most likely one at the moment is the ANC with the DA and the IFP and potentially other smaller parties as well. That's the most business-friendly government and the best one for the market. And if this was to go forward, I think we could expect more market-friendly legislation, more initiatives that would help it be better for the business environment and which would help the economy in the long term. But this said, there's still no guarantee of this government coming into power. And there's a lot of active opposition within the ANC to partner with the DA, which may lead to the EFF or other more radical parties joining a government, which won't be as business friendly. And of course, there's still no guarantee that even if the unity or coalition government actually comes together once formed, whether it will be able to work together, which might lead to policy stasis, as we've seen in municipalities around the country that are governed by coalitions. So there's still lots of challenges ahead for the governance of the country, but I think really the benefits and the challenges going forward will depend on what happens tomorrow.
How do these ideological differences between the key political parties involved in the unity government discussions impact the potential for collaboration and ultimately effective governance?
Yeah, and this is really the largest issue, which has made the process of forming a government so difficult. And the ANC internally is the one that has to find its way on whether it's going to go with the more market-friendly option, which, as you said, is also seen and touted as a way to push more white minority interests, or will it go with the more radical option and include parties which have called for nationalization of all land or scrapping of the constitution? So it's a real crossroads for South Africa, and the decision on which path economically and politically we're going to take is quite important, and it's going to be roadmap based on which parties the ANC decides to partner with. I think in terms of collaboration and effective governance, regardless of the path chosen, it's going to be quite difficult because there's an internal split within the ANC, which is going to affect voting patterns in the National Assembly, but also because political parties now in South Africa see everything as a zero-sum game, and they're still going to try and claim victory for themselves as a political party, as a single party, rather than being able to function as a united government, which is going to make governance very difficult at a national level.
Yeah. And in what ways does the current attempt to form a unity government in South Africa differ from the unity government that was established post the 1994 elections? And what lessons could be applied from that historical precedent?
The main difference is that in 1994, the interim constitution that was in effect was written knowing that there was going to be a government of national unity. And so it was prescribed of how cabinet positions would be allocated. And there was a framework for how things would work. The new constitution that came in 1999 doesn't have this. And this isn't a bad thing, because I think for a coalition government or government of national unity, there needs to be flexibility. There needs to be negotiation between the parties on what the government should look like and on how it should govern. So I think that's probably the biggest difference between 94. I mean, in terms of lessons, I actually think more lessons can and should be learned from our experiences with coalition governments at a municipal level, and basically on how poorly they've worked, with small parties being able to completely derail the sitting government and cause havoc and a lack of governance. So at the national government, this is going to be the first time that these parties, the DA and the IFP, have ever been in opposition at that level. And they're going to have to accept that they're not there anymore to keep the executive to account. They're part of the executive. And they're going to have to compromise in order to keep government working as it needs to for the people of South Africa.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sean, for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued analysis on this.
Thank you.
Fan of Italy's famous cuisine? Well, we are serving it with a side of diplomacy. As the G7 leaders gather in southern Italy, Vantage is taking you to the heart of the action. What's the agenda? Who is invited? And how is Italy preparing for it? Catch the special edition of Vantage throughout this week, only on Firstpost. Fan of Italy's famous cuisine? Well, we are serving it with a side of diplomacy. As G7 leaders gather in southern Italy, Vantage is taking you to the heart of the action. What's the agenda? Who is invited? And how is Italy preparing for it? Catch the special edition of Vantage throughout this week, only on Firstpost.